when we go live. All right. Welcome once again, boys and girls, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, with my sidekick in the Great White North, North Louisiana, that is, Sean Williams, who is buried under a foot of snow. Sean, how you doing tonight?
Man, you wouldn't believe it. There's panic in the driveways out here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight on a somewhat anticlimactic post-season edition of Under the Dome. We want to thank you guys for choosing us to spend your Tuesday night with. We want to invite you guys to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube. And we want to thank Fan First Productions for being our sponsor. And really, that's about the quickest intro I've ever done, I think. But I'm really anxious. We always guests on, because we know you get tired of looking at the two of us and listening to the two of us drone on endlessly. But tonight we got a very special guest. He is a New Orleans Saints 2015 Hall of Fame inductee, Saints Hall of Fame inductee. He played his college. I guess in this case, we probably need to go back a little bit further. And a St. Aug Purple Knight. And took his show to Nebraska. Played for Tom Osborne. And me growing up as an Oklahoma fan, I knew of Tyrone. In 1993, in the fifth round of the draft, this New Orleans Saints made him a Saint, and the rest, as they say, is history. You guys help us make welcome tonight's special guest, Mr. Tyrone Hughes. We really need.
We need like an applause track, or canned audience.
I gotta get some sound effects up in there.
Yeah, I had a few for a while. They were telling me though I was violating copyright laws.
Now, I don't know if you're viewing. Thanks a lot for having me on. First of all, I've been watching you guys and actually following you guys all year. Y'all been doing a great job. Podcast you've been doing, and I know there's some of my followers out there. I just hit some of my friends up all over, as many as I could get real quick on Messenger to send them the link. And so I know they're out there as well. And I don't know if they can see me or not, or if they're just hearing me. I thank everybody for attending and listening. And thanks for having me on.
Well, Tyrone, like I was telling you off the air, you're one of two draft picks I actually nailed with going to the Saints correctly. You and Jimmy Graham. The rest of them, I'm just hit or miss. But I was really excited when we got you because, yes, we needed a kick returner in the worst way. And I'm sure you remember a lot of fans wanted you to play wide receiver for the Saints, just like you played wide receiver at Nebraska. So kind of describe a little bit what it's like on draft day, waiting to see your name get called, and what it's like to get that phone call from an organization saying, hey, welcome to the New Orleans Saints. We just selected you. Are you interested in being a Saint?
Well, I tell you what, coming out of Nebraska, first of all, or going to Nebraska, was MVP of the state in Louisiana, coming out of St. Augustine. I always got to give my Purple Knights a shout out. Went to Nebraska, and everybody's like, how is a black kid out of Louisiana get to Nebraska? And I tell them all the time, they had a great recruiter named Jack Pierce who got me to Nebraska. But also Mickey Joseph and Reggie Cooper, who were the MVP, offensive and defensive MVP of the state in '87. I came out in '88. Yep. So, of course, the question that Hughes, Nebraska doing that, they grabbed our best players 2 years in a row. Got to Nebraska, did an excellent job as a kick returner, set records there. Came into my junior year. I ended up breaking my wrist in the Colorado game. So going into the Oklahoma game, which was always the big game of the year, we were in the Big 8 at the time. I broke my wrist. So home, they cut the cast off, cut the cast down on my wrist, and I was able to do kickoff returns. I couldn't do punt returns, but I did do kickoff returns. Had a great return to start off the second half, and we ended up winning the game, going to the Orange Bowl to play against Miami Hurricanes at that time, which then they had Gino Torretta as the quarterback, Horace Copeland, and Lamar Thomas, who were two or 6'3", 6'4", something like that, but 7 feet high jumpers. And they had a little midget. I always mess with him. He had a little, I'll call him a midget, short guy, but a hell of a speedster, who was also their top kick returner, Kevin Smith, which was, again, this was 1991. And we go in to play against Miami Hurricanes, and me not wanting to just be a returner in that game because I still had the cast on, I went to Coach Osborne and to Coach George Darlington, who was my defensive back coach at the time. And I said, Coach, look, why don't you guys let me play on defense? Because there's a lot of speed over there, and we're going to need some guys to help cover them. And me being one of the fastest guys on the team at the time, Coach Osborne wasn't in favor of it, but Coach Darlington was. So he kind of helped petition for me to come on the defensive side. And so I worked out in practice, doing some one-on-ones, was able to cover a lot of our receivers. And Coach Osborne decided to let me play both ways. Decided to let me play defensive back against the Miami Hurricanes in the bowl game. And so I did an okay job. Wouldn't say great, wouldn't say bad. It was first time playing cornerback, you know, had some speed out there. So going into the spring of my year, they decided to I went to Coach Osborne. I said, well, Coach, you know, played defense in the bowl game. You know, I am a receiver, one of the fastest guys on the team. Why don't you let me play both ways? So he said, well, Ty, and Coach Osborne's voice. Coach Osborne's the calmest guy. He has a PhD in psychology, so he's always analyzing you. But he's this real Christian guy, and he's real soft-spoken. Well, Ty, if you play both ways, you're only going to be a 75% player. I looked at him. I said, well, Coach, my 75% is better than some of the 100% we got over there.
Hey, so you got to believe in yourself before anybody else.
So they told me no. So I went and continued playing wide receiver. So going into my senior year, the fall of my senior year, I was top 5 in the country as far as being picked. And so I kind of got into it with my wide receiver coach, and they ended up basically benching me most of the year. Up until that year, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Colorado, everybody had gotten away from the option and started throwing the ball. So in 5 games that year, they decided during the season to come to me and say, well, Ty, we play both ways. Against Colorado, I had to cover Michael Westbrook, and I had to run routes against Deion Figures. Kansas State, I played both ways. Missouri, I played both ways. About 2 other games, I played both ways. And then comes the bowl game against Florida State. We played against Florida State that year, my senior year. And we played against Charlie Ward, and they had another guy from St. Augustine High School as a running back, Sean Jackson. I was more of a safety type spy on Charlie Ward. We ended up losing the game, but coming into now all of a sudden, which I had played receiver since Pop Warner and kick returner, all of a sudden now the question was, where do we draft him? We don't know if to draft him as a wide receiver or a kick returner. And the Saints worked me out, brought me in, worked me out as a receiver and a defensive back, which I definitely knew they needed a punt and kick returner that year. And so the draft came. I was, again, projected to go between the first and the 3rd round, ended up slipping to the 5th round, which I'm looking at ESPN, the ticket, because obviously the draft is off of television. And as the ticket is going across, I get a call from the Cincinnati Bengals saying, stay by the phone. And so I'm like, great, I appreciate it. Hang up the phone, and I'm like, I do not want to go to Cincinnati. So, and so I'm like, please, I don't want to go to Cincinnati.
Nobody does.
I'm watching the ticket. The bottom line is it scrolls across the screen and it says the Cincinnati Bengals had picked so I couldn't even remember who the guy was. And then the next team was the New Orleans Saints up, and it showed the New Orleans picks Tyrone Hughes. And I get a call from Bill Kuharic or Jim Miller, one of the two. And they said, I pick up the phone. They're like, hey, Tyrone, it's the, such and such from the New Orleans Saints. Congratulations. We just picked you. You're going to be a homeboy. And I literally started crying because I knew I was going to get drafted, but I never thought I'd be at home playing for the hometown team. And so that basically how I ended up being a New Orleans Saint.
Well, that's great.
Well, let me ask you, Tyrone. There's guys like yourself, more recently. What exactly does it mean to start your career as a Purple Knight and to wind up lacing it up with that black and gold uniform on?
I mean, again, like I said, it was hard to believe because you know, MVP of the state coming from St. Aug, which is almost like a prestigious university. Everybody say we got a coat over there, but at 2600. But you know, to be a St. Augustine Purple Knight and to play for the New Orleans Saints, I mean, that's one of the biggest honors that you could ever have. You know, I mean, I talk about Delvin saying, "Oh, you went to 35," and the only other person came out of 35 was Neil Smith. So, you know, which they've had other people, but that's the known people, guys that they have, and so. I joke with him about it, and I joke with Neil about it from time to time when I talk to him. But I mean, that was one of the greatest honors that I could definitely ever have because, again, I was able to play at home where I didn't have to worry about flying people in, although the tickets were crazy because everybody thought I got them for free and everybody wanted them.
Tyrone, just out of curiosity, I looked up who the Bengals picked. They picked a player by the name of Foray Duckett. Out of Nevada. He was a cornerback. So, yeah, real famous guy.
Well, I was thankful they didn't pick me because I didn't want to go to Cincinnati.
Nobody wants to go to Cincinnati. Nobody wants to go to Cincinnati or Cleveland.
For the record, Tyrone was drafted in 1993, and in that 93 season, he was selected to the Pro Bowl. He was a second-team All-Pro. Tyrone, I want to ask you one thing. I ask you about one game, and I'm going to give you a date and see if this jogs your memory any at all. October 23rd, 1994.
Oh,
I know that date too.
Made history.
Yes, he did.
Made history. I tell you, October 23rd, 1994. I'm gonna tell you what was crazy about that game. I think a week or so before we had played San Diego, and we had a cornerback named Carl Lee, and I think Carl got hurt in that game, and we had another cornerback, Tyrone Leggett, and I think Tyrone Leggett ended up getting hurt in that game. So I ended up coming in that towards the end of that game playing cornerback and did an excellent job. So that next week, I ended up starting as a defensive back in that Rams game, but also the highlight of that game, it was the first game that Jim Everett was playing against the Rams because he had just come over from the Rams as our quarterback.
Yep.
And in that game, I had the first touchdown scored on me. I had a first interception in that game. And then, of course, I had the two kickoff returns that were NFL records and punt return that gave me the combined yardage of NFL records for a single game.
You're being modest, dude. I got it written down here.
I was at that game, by the way, and Zendejas did not like this game.
No, he
most
did.
Kickoff return yards, single game, 304. Most punt yards combined in a single game, 347, and 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns.
And actually that tied the 2 kickoff returns for touchdown, tied an NFL record. There was a punt return that I had in that game that I started off to the right and ended up going back to the left. And the guy, it's like you ready to hit the next gear, and somebody tripped me up from behind. When we watched that film of that return, it was like, oh my God, there was nobody. If I would have been able to get away, if he hadn't tripped me up, I would be the single only guy in NFL history to score 3 returns in a game. I mean, it was just that, it was that close, literally a hand.
Like I said, I was at that game and I got to hear the radio call after the game was over because WWL plays, of course, the clips, the highlights of Jim Henderson's radio call.
Oh, Jim did an amazing job. I mean, I look at it now because I even have it. I have the whole induction, which has all of the highlights. Because initially on my Facebook page, if you go to it, you'll see the Saints Monday night game against the 49ers, where I picked up fumble, and I think today that still holds as the longest fumble return in Saints history, which was 89 yards. I think that still stands. But if you go to the next script or the next post, is the induction ceremony, which has all of my highlights. And it has the sound where you can hear Jim Henderson. And actually in that game, before the game started, I was stretching. And as I'm stretching, you know, they bring the camera around, get some sound bites. I'm like, well, I think I'm going to get 2 today, punt return and the kickoff return. And it ended up being 2 kickoff returns. But Jim Henderson, I mean, just listening to him when I'm running, I get chills down my spine because it's just so exciting just to hear him commentate while I'm running.
Yep, Ty on the fly, the daily double, folks.
The daily double, yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. That's probably one of the best ones I heard because Jim Henderson is by far, and I'm saying this, of course, as a biased Saints fan, but Jim Henderson by far has to have some of the greatest radio calls I've ever heard from
he comes up with some sounds that you really, I mean, like I said, it gets you, and I don't know where they come from or how he doesn't, but even in his commentaries, you know, he comes up with some great storyline.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ty, we also heard a rumor that was leaked on Twitter about you being interested in a job here in New Orleans with your old school St. Aug Purple Knights as a coach. You care to elaborate on that?
Well, I saw the tweet. I did see the tweet. I heard about it. Had a bunch of people call me about it. Initially, I was not going to apply for the job. I was trying to get on a committee to pick the next head coach, because I think that's been one of our problems, is finding the right person to coach the team. And so after speaking with several influential people that are Purple Knights, I decided to apply for the job.
Very good. Very good. Well, best of luck to you on that.
Thank you.
That'll be exciting to have a former.
I got to tell you, Tyrone, on our live chat on YouTube, there's a comment that I think you should be privy to. Shannon Hamilton says, "We were honored to have you as a Purple Knight and a Saint."
Oh, well, tells you very much. If he's listening, thank you, Shannon. Shannon's a good friend of mine. I know him very well, and he is a Purple Knight as well. And I just think that we need somebody who can, who has the knowledge of the game, to bring St. Aug. I mean, we've always had talent. If you look across the board, I mean, I think we're the #1 team in the state, and maybe in the top 5, if I'm not mistaken, in the country what got, but yet we haven't won a state championship since 1979. And so,
wow.
You know, I think that's a testament. Obviously, we have the talent. We just haven't had the coaching.
You know, in doing my research for this interview, I look up notable people that
you go to Wikipedia and you look up notables. Now, notables don't even describe just the football note, and they don't even, and that's not even talking about the scholars. You're gonna probably just see notable athletic names or, you know, celebrity notables. We have several scholars, first, you know, African American this, first African American that. So I mean, but when you go look through those notables, you're gonna come up with some names that you're gonna be like, wow, he went there.
Yeah, I didn't realize just exactly how many people had gone. That I
read the list for those who may not know.
Oh wow, that would take a while.
We got time.
Well, Tyrone, I used to work with a guy who actually played on that basketball team, the first basketball team to ever play a white school. His name was Al White, and yeah, he played on that team, so I know all about St. Aug's rich history. And I believe they made a movie about that, but the movie kind of took a lot of liberties with the game. They made it, of course, a lot closer than it really was, and the fact was they killed. I think it was Jesuit they played, and
Jesuit was the white
and
school.
They killed them.
We had to kind of give everybody else some of the St. Aug history. We had to literally, we were all black. We are an all black male Catholic school. And we had to literally fight to get into the Catholic League. We had a bunch of state championships in what they called the LIO League with the public schools back in the day. Then we came into the LHSAA, and we ended up winning, I think, in the 60s, 1 or 2 in the 60s, and then three of them in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, under Coach Otis Washington. But that particular game, Jesuit was basically the Catholic champions, and I think we might have still been in the LIO League, and we ended up coming together and playing a game secretly in the gym, and we ended up beating Jesuit, and they did make a movie about it. So that was, you know, St. Aug is rich in tradition, and that's why I say, you know, some people look at us as a cult, you know, because it's like they're trying to figure out how is it we get so many guys or get so much talent. And basically the parents or the fathers that have went to the school, because I mean, it's a given. If your dad went to St. Aug, once you born, you already know where you're going to high school. It's not even a question. Don't even think about it anywhere else.
Well, I'm an old Catholic school alum too. I went to De La Salle, so I was all part of that old 11 Quad A.
11 Quad A, exactly.
Way back in the day.
Chalmette, you know, all of these schools that were basically all boys at the time.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it was De La Salle, Shaw, Jesuit, Rummel, Chalmette, St. Aug, and Holy Cross. And that was 11 Quad A. So yeah, it was. We played against when Shaw, when they had the Forcades and Nacho Almagamo, and I know who Mickey Joseph was over there, and I know Rummel had the Roths were there when I was there, and Jesuit had their power. So yeah,
I'll tell you what, Rummel had always been a foe to us, because even the 2 years we went back to back in 78 and 79, we went 75, we went 15-0, and 78 and 79 we went 14, 78 and 79 back to back. But both of those years, that one loss came to Rummel. So they've always been tough against us.
Absolutely. Tyrone, let me ask you this. Why do you think, if the Saints worked you out as a receiver and a defensive back, and you don't have to really get ugly or telling you tales you don't want to tell, but why don't you think they wanted to play you as a receiver? What do you think happened there with that?
Um, I'll tell you
I know.
this.
I just want to be delicate as possible.
But you don't have to be.
I'll tell you this. Wow, Shannon. I'll tell you this. The issue was, and I'll put it to you this way: I was one of the fastest guys on the team.
Yep.
And when I got to, I think my third year, the Saints started putting me on offense. You know, ran a couple of reverses or things like that. Actually, it might have been even my last year, but after they worked me out, Jim Moore Jr. actually wanted me as a defensive back. So I think that's why they drafted me as a defensive back. But everybody had always said, even the commentators, you know, Tyrone's one of the fastest guys on the team. Why don't you guys work him out? I mean, why don't you guys use him as a receiver?
Yep.
And which I had always been. And so Jim Moore's response was, and to tell you how, regardless how asinine something may sound, they're going to say it to justify their reasoning. And Jim Moore said, well, we don't feel he can catch good enough.
I remember that. I remember that.
Now, keep in mind, I'm your starting kick and punt returner.
Yes.
You don't feel I can catch good enough to be a receiver. Now, if I drop a pass, that's incomplete. If I drop a punt where I'm looking up in the sky and I got 11 guys trying to kill me and I got to focus on the ball, and I drop it, that's a turnover.
Yep.
So it didn't make any sense, but that's what they used to justify me not playing on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, offensive side of the ball.
Well, Jim Elmore, the junior, has, you know, a lot of fans really resent him because they felt, and this is right about at the end of your time with the Saints. I think 96, I think, was near the end of your time with the Saints.
Yep.
When they drafted Alex Molden instead of Eddie George, they blamed Jim Elmore, the junior, you know, for
the comment about me not being able to catch came from the senior. The junior did actually help me out become a better defensive back. Now I'll tell you this: when they drafted Alex Molden, it became obvious that they wanted him, obviously because he's the first round pick. They tried to make him and at the time I was I wasn't the starter because we had just gotten Eric Allen and Mark
McMillan
as the starting cornerback. So I was always the nickel and dime guy anyway, but they put Alex Molden in and tried to kind of weed me out to say, and that's kind of was the writing on the wall. Well, I ain't gonna be here next year. But it was amazing how every time we came up against somebody who had the #1 receiver, I was always responsible for covering them. Mm-hmm. My third year, we played against the Atlanta Falcons when they had the run and shoot, and Terrence Mathis was the receiver.
Yes.
I had to cover him. He didn't catch a pass on me. I had to cover. We played Minnesota Vikings. I had to cover Chris Carter. He caught a couple of passes on me. Didn't score a touchdown. Came back my last year in '96. Went back and played against the Falcons. And again, all of this time up until these games, I'm on the bench as the nickel and dime guy. But we come up against the Falcons again. That year they had Eric Metcalf, receiver out of the backfield in the NFL, and Terrence Mathis was the leading receiver. For catches. So when we go to nickel and dime and Eric Metcalf is in the backfield, I have to cover Terrence Mathis. Didn't catch a touchdown on me. Didn't catch a pass on me. Whenever Eric Metcalf would line up in the slot, I would have to cover Eric Metcalf. So it was amazing how, okay, you guys are trying to put Alex Molden in at this time, but yet every time I was the one who had to always cover the top receivers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You believe me, you weren't the only one noticing these things. They were having a lot of fun on the talk radio back then because there was no internet back then. They were having a lot of fun on talk radio about this. There was a lot of anger about how they were using you, particularly because we seemed to get slower even though you had Quinn Early and then they brought in Michael Haynes, Wesley Walls played 95 with you. It was obvious they were aiming more towards, I don't know, still sticking with that possession kind of Eric Martin receiver, trying to promote Torrance Small, who's a friend of mine. I'm not going to say anything bad about Torrance, but Torrance Small, trying to promote him kind of as the new possession receiver, and they weren't using you at all. And we kept saying, man, if you put Tyrone and Michael Haynes on opposite sides, you're going to spread that defense out. They're going to have a heck of a time trying to figure out who to double up on, because that's a lot of speed out there. The Falcons were using Deion Sanders in that way, and I think he was even going to I think he was at the 49ers by this point.
Yeah, exactly. My last year, he was at the 49ers, yeah.
Right. So they were using Deion Sanders in offensive packages. We're like, just one or two packages. Maybe they might give you a token reverse, but no routes you were running, no receiver things. And it's like he played receiver. He played receiver at Nebraska. I don't understand why you can't use him as a receiver. So, yeah, that was one of the many things that really soured Saints fans towards Jim Moore and some of the things that he was doing.
And one of the things that really kind of got me is that, or the reason why they did what they did with me, as far as allowing me to being able to cover, they knew I could cover by my third and fourth year, but they also knew I knew the whole defense, and that was one of the things. Whether it was in college or even with the NFL, by my second year, I understood the defense. I understood what we were doing. I understood what an offense was trying to do. So one of the things that they could never tell you is that I may not have been the best athlete or the best player on the team, but they always knew I knew what I was doing, because when Carolina first came out, the first year we played them was when Sam Mills ended up going to them. The first year we played them, they came out in a 3 wide receiver package, and what we did to kind of compensate, because we wanted to play more man coverage, was we took our safety, Sean Lumpkin, out, had Vince Buck back as the free safety, and I had to cover. I ended up playing safety in that game and ended up having to cover the slot receiver. So that gave us opportunity to play more man coverage on a slot receiver as opposed to having a safety in the game. And so there were things that we did because we were able to do because I was in the game that a lot of people don't realize. But I didn't come off the field, whether it was as a nickel or dime, played against San Diego, as a starting corner. I did my job. It's basically what I'm saying. I did my job. So even though they brought in somebody else, drafted Alex Molden, tried to weed me out, at the end of the day, they still knew they had to play me because I knew what I was doing.
Well, Tyrone, one of the things you just said, I want to kind of bring us to the next subject matter. You were talking about by your second and third year, you understood what the defense was doing. You understood what the offense was trying to do. You understood all basically the whole game of football at the professional level. Let's talk about what the Saints have done with these rookies, with a player like Marshawn Lattimore, and a player like Marcus Williams, and players like Alvin Kamara. These are kids who are just coming in. And this is a very complex system, offensively and defensively, to really master this and to become starters and impact players at this level. I know you've been following the Saints. Give us your impressions then of what you see out of these guys and how impressed you are they were able to understand all this in a rookie season.
Well, I'll tell you, and like I say all the time, when you, as a player, it takes a kid, and I say this all the time, it takes a kid at least 3 years on every level to understand the game. You come into high school as a sophomore, you don't really understand it till your senior year. You come into college as a freshman, you don't understand it till your junior year. You come into the NFL as a rookie, you don't start to understand it until your third or possibly fourth year. So the Saints having the success that they have so far is not because these guys know what they're doing. doing being ballers. They're being athletes. They don't really understand the game yet. It hasn't come to them yet. So that's why I say that this defense, if they're able to keep them together, can only get better, because the one thing about the NFL, it's not about how much talent you have that keeps you around. It's the knowledge of the game, the little things that help get you by. Everybody has talent, but everybody doesn't have the brains and the understanding to understand what's coming. And now being a student of the game, studying film plays a part of it. And I tell the kids that I've worked with, you know, I don't care how much talent you have. When you get to the NFL, it's a job. You're there for about 8 hours a day. But out of those 8 hours, 1 hour is lunch, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours is practice. So those other 5 hours, you're studying film. Because it's the mental aspect, and everybody wonders why the Patriots do so well. Is because they keep veterans, 4 to 8 year veterans on their team, or they'll bring those guys in, guys who understand the game and can fit into a system where, you know, cover 3 is going to be cover 3, cover 1 is going to be cover 1. So defensively, it's not going to be hard. All you have to do is pick up the terminology. It's going to be harder probably for safeties more so than corners, because they have to do more just or things like that, and show more disguises. But as a corner in the NFL, basically when you watch Lattimore, he's in a lot of man coverage. So he's just out there. He knows I'm cover 3, or I'm man coverage, or maybe cover 4, what have you, cover 2. It's simple. You know what the responsibilities are as a corner. You just may have a different terminology. But for him, he's just out there. Ball. He stand formations and going to end up in this formation, or I see you know, they're going to run a screen or a game situation. What's going to happen? And the same thing goes for Marcus Williams. They're just out there playing. You know, they're being athletes, and so and if JJ McCluskey is listening, he knows what we used to call that. You know, when you just out there balling. Because it was me, him, Othello Henderson, Shane Parkour, and Israel Byrd. And it was just 5 rookies out there. We were just balling. That's all it was. But we called it something else. But, you know, we was just out there being athletes. So when you get when these guys start to really understand the game in years 3 and 4, that's when you're really going to see them excel.
Well, I want to transition this into something that I've been struggling with since Sunday. I think that, and I want to get your take on it, Tyrone, because you are a defensive back, and the elephant in the room, if you want to call it that, the Marcus Williams play that at the end of the game. Explain what exactly happened on that play.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what I think happened. Oh, I'm gonna tell you what I saw, and I'm gonna tell you what he said, and then we'll get into the criticisms. What he said was he didn't want to. He felt he got there too early, and he didn't want to get a pass interference. So I still don't understand it, but he tried. I don't know if he tried to avoid what he's saying, or he just didn't want to get a pass interference. Basically, what I saw is if you were trying to avoid getting a pass interference, that would make you more hesitant. Maybe even, okay, I'm gonna let him catch the ball and then basically wrap him up, tackle him, and let him go down. What I saw was somebody trying to knock somebody out, and head down, went with the shoulder, no wrap up. And when you listen to the receiver, he said, I took a snapshot as I'm running, and I realized once he missed the tackle that there was nobody. I was going to go out of bounds. But once he missed the tackle, I realized there was no one else behind him, so I turned up the field. Now, on that play, and that's all I'm talking about, is that play, is does he warrant the criticism that he has gotten? Yes, he does. As it pertains to football, meaning he didn't use the proper technique. He missed the tackle. It was a mistake. It was bad. Whatever you want to call. Was he garbage on that play? You can say all of those things. But when you get into he needs to kill himself, he needs to go play for somebody else. I mean, if you're that tied up as a fan into football so much, you really need to evaluate your own life. Because it shouldn't be that serious to you. It is a game. That's all. Because at the end of the day, like you say, that play right there, we wouldn't even be talking about it because the game would have been over. It wouldn't even been close. He's made plays before. You're talking about one play. Yes, he messed up on that one play. He deserved to be criticized. You know you're going to get criticized. It comes with the job. But at the end of the day, it's a job. You know what's happening? He may be depressed. He's going to be sorry about it. He's hell over bent about it. But also on today, he probably picked up his check and he going home.
Yes.
And all of these fans that's out there still complaining and crying because fans, for whatever reason, they're going to take a loss from Sunday to Sunday. Here, we take losses from Sunday to Monday because we got to worry about the next team. The only unfortunate thing about this game is that there is no next week.
Yeah.
So fans are going to be stuck with this for up until next year, and they're going to be carrying it with it. So all year long, these people are going to be mad about the fact he missed that tackle. Well, okay, but if he wouldn't have made the interception prior to that, they wouldn't have had an opportunity game anyway. Was he should have made the tackle, wrap him up, keep him in bounds. The game is over. The guy goes out of bounds. They line up. They kick a field goal. Maybe they make it. Maybe they don't. We don't know. But as it pertains to the criticism on that play alone, yes, it was warranted. Anything other than that, no. You just be a fan, let it go, move on, go to work, do your job, be happy, be satisfied. The Saints made it as far as they did. They weren't, when you look at it, to go this far. Take the game as it is and what it is for. It's a game. That's all. We understand that fans are passionate, but we also, as players, understand fans are only going to like us as long as we're doing good. Because if you remember a couple of years ago, or several years ago, when Drew Brees had his babies or one of his kids, and he threw a couple of interceptions, fans was jumping on him. Oh, he need to go back home and be with his kids and all that. And I'm like, on the future mayor of New Orleans, he could be the mayor. He could be the mayor of New Orleans. You know, it's like, fans don't care. All they're concerned about is winning. And I understand that. And we as players understand that. But we also understand that it's just a game. We do our job. Those other guys get paid as well. Once the game is over, we got to worry about the next team. Fans are going to take it from Sunday to Sunday. We take it from Sunday to Monday.
That's a great point because yeah, fans do carry these for a long time. I mean, I can remember games. You know, we're talking about the good games that you were involved in. I knew exactly when he said dates. Yep, I know that game. Yep, I know that game. You know, but I also remember the bad games. I remember the games that we lost and why we lost them and how it came apart. And that's what fans do. They talk about these games and argue about these games like we can change something. But we're going to argue about these things in the player's mind. It's like, hey, that's over. That's the past. We got to move forward because the next Sunday's coming or the next year is coming. We don't know when our last game is, but we just got to keep thinking about the next game because that's how you were conditioned as a player to think. Because if you think about that play that you blew 3 years ago against another team, you're not concentrating on your job right now to do what you need to do to be successful. And that fans just don't have to think like that. They have the luxury of rehashing old games and old plays over and over and over again. So they're so microanalyzed that what actually happened isn't important anymore. It's about how you think it should have been.
Exactly. I mean, and one of the things, what everybody fails to realize, okay, okay, look at it this way. If the Saints would have got a first down, they wouldn't have had a problem. We wouldn't even be in that situation because they either could have ran the clock out or
That's right.
kicked the field goal with less time.
Yep, that's my point. That was my point on my Sundays, good, bad, and ugly. Is that we didn't get that
I really would like to see and know what the defensive call was, because when I look at the play before, and I don't know, and I talked to Ed Daniels because he said he wants me to come on his show tomorrow night. I asked him, I say, Ed, can you get another shot of the play before? He said, Tyrone, there was a guy running down the middle of the field. I said, exactly. I said, and I don't know if they had a safety because of the angle. I couldn't tell if they had a safety in the middle of the field or not, or if the quarterback just missed him, because the guy was running free down the middle. It would have been a touchdown. But again, I don't know if they had a safety sitting there or not. But coming back to that play, what I noticed was guys rushing to 4. So now that safety, I'm thinking, may not have been there, because I'm still trying to figure out where was the other safety on that. Once the ball went up in there, they should have had another safety getting over the top over on that side. So even if Marcus missed the tackle, there should have been another safety there to make the tackle.
I think Von Bell was on the other side next to Lattimore, because I think they went, if I remember the play correctly, they went five wide with a bunch formation to the right. So you've got 3, and what you see is the bottom guy. I'm gonna say it's Kyle Rudolph. I'm pretty sure that's who it was. He runs a quick little out.
Well, they called it
PJ Williams is on top of that.
L7, something like so. Basically, you're getting all corner routes, which is what they ran, and so you still had. But as a safety, you should be reading the quarterback and your drop, and still being able to see receivers. So if the quarterback is looking to one side, the minute he releases that ball, you should be busting your tail to get over there.
And I think what
the point was, there was nobody behind Marcus after he missed that tackle.
Yeah, Marcus comes in.
The only one close enough to even. The only one even close enough to make a play was Crawley, and unfortunately, when Marcus went down, he took Crawley out.
Yeah, Marcus comes at a hard angle, so it's like you said, he came for the knockout shot instead of just wrapping him up, because I think he was thinking I'll hit him and make him either drop the ball or he'll fall in bounds. And yeah, that was a problem. Instead of conceding the catch and tackling him, just wait for like a punt. You wait for him to catch the ball and tackle him right there in bounds. He went for the shot. And I think that's what he should have done. I don't know what his thought process was, because I know he's not looking at the clock. He's watching the play. He's watching the ball. And all he's thinking about is, I need to tackle him in bounds.
Well, see, and that's where, as you get older, because again, understand this. Football, whether you're a coach or a player, is basically on-the-job training. You learn year in and year out of what not to do. And that only way you learn that is from being in those experiences, unless you have a coach who has prepared you for those situations. Now, keep in mind, you can only coach what you know. So if you haven't been in that situation, you can't prepare your players for that situation. And that's a problem that I have with a lot of coaches, whether it's college, high school, NFL. They don't have the knowledge or the situation how to prepare the guys they're coaching. Most of these guys get their jobs from being quality control in the NFL or grad assistants and on college level, which basically means you broke down film for 2 years. After those 2 years of breaking down film, you get a coaching job. So most of these guys are learning and coaching kids along with the kids, but yet they're ready to holler and scream, but you haven't put those kids in a position to make the right play because you don't know. Yeah.
And that's ultimately my point when it comes to Marcus Williams and the criticism he's getting. It is the first time he's experienced something like that at the professional level, for sure.
I bet you next year, if he gets in that same situation, it ain't gonna happen again. Why? Because he's went through that experience.
Exactly. Okay, and while you were talking earlier too, I was putting up a couple pictures of some critical interceptions that Marcus Williams had done during the season, including the game, the playoff game itself, to lead the comeback, to remind people that, hey, this is a playmaking safety. This is a guy, as a rookie, who had a tremendous impact for this team. So he is going to be, just like Marshawn Lattimore, he is going to be only getting better each time for the things that we've been talking about, learning these situations. Now, his coach is a former defensive back. It's Aaron Glenn. And Aaron Glenn has been
Aaron Glenn was a good defensive back. So the question comes, did they tell them when they left the sideline, look, be prepared for this, keep them in bounds. This is how much time they have on the clock. This is all we need. They're trying to get into field goal range, or all they need is a field goal. And I know these guys, that's some of the things or some of the situations you actually practice. And I'm sure Sean situations where you'll go, okay, hey, it's 2 minutes left in the game, no timeouts, or it's a minute and 5 seconds left in the game and 2 timeouts. So you kind of as a defensive coordinator, you have to call your defense according to the time on the clock, the field position, and then also what is it that they're trying to accomplish? Do they need a touchdown or do they need a field goal? So all of these into the defensive coordinator's head to where he should have on his chart all in this situation. These are the plays I need to call in this situation. So your team is prepared every time they step out on the field. And I didn't see that in those last 2 plays.
Yeah, I think that the whole key was protect the sidelines, let them catch the ball inbounds, and run time off, but don't let them get out of bounds. And I think that's all that was going through their head, and that's all they were thinking about was don't let them go out of bounds, don't let them stop the clock.
And you're right, and I think that was the gist of it. But again, going back to that play before, I need to see if they had a safety in that middle of the field, because if they didn't, understand they had 14 seconds left on the clock. Yeah, on that play before. If you throw that ball to that guy down the middle of the field, he's either one going to catch it and score if there was not a safety there, or if he gets down, your team has enough time to get there to clock the ball and still line up for a field goal. So that's the reason why I wanted to see from that different angle what was going on, because if you're protecting the sidelines in that situation, that is not something with 14 seconds left you want to do as a defense.
Yeah. Ed needs to get a hold of the all 22 film, which I think comes out tomorrow. But yeah, that would be what you want to see, the all 22. That way you can see where the safety is in that alignment. Because if not, that's just a missed opportunity.
Sorry,
Tyrone, no, go ahead.
I want to ask you. I follow you on Facebook, and you made an interesting assessment. I think it was after the game the other night about officiating. What needs to be done in the offseason because it seems like, and now especially in the postseason, every week and more criticisms. And as Saints fans, there was the Atlanta game, obviously. What needs to be done to fix this problem?
Well, let me say this. Officiating is a problem, a big problem on the high school level. I don't see it as bad on the college level, but then you get to the NFL and people would think because there are so many cameras that it makes a difference. No, it doesn't, because we've seen how it still can be bad. The problem that I have with the officials, and I'm surprised that the NFL has not, or these owners have not addressed this, is that they have all of the control of the outcome of a game, but yet a coach cannot criticize them. So you mean to tell me you can sit up here, make a bad call, it's okay, but yet if a coach criticizes you, then he gets fined because you're not supposed to talk bad about the refs? That's BS to me. I mean,
absolutely. I
and what they'll tell you,
1000% agree with that.
What they'll tell you is, okay, well, send the. In other words, what consequences do they have for making bad calls? They'll tell you send the film and we'll look at it, especially on the high school level. Send the film and we'll look at it. But is it going to change the outcome of a game? No, it's not.
No.
What consequences are those referees? Are they going to be fined? Are they going to be have to sit out a game or a weekend or whatever and not coach? What consequences are there for referees for making bad calls? None. And what happens is, and I guess they're saying, you know, hey, the best crew is the crew, or the best voted on crew, or the best crew that has the crew that has the best write-ups in the NFL do the Super Bowl. Okay, that's a little extra money, but do you know what these guys get paid? They're not worrying about missing one Super Bowl or whatever after going through a whole season, because we're going to have our same crew every week, regardless of what the outcome of the game was, regardless of how much we affected that game, then that's going to be done to us. But yet a coach or a player cannot scrutinize or criticize those referees. So it really needs to.
Don't get me started on high school referees. I got kicked out of a basketball game because I called out one for a bad call. My daughter played high school basketball, and she won a state championship, but the officiating is horrible.
Oh, this year, and I hate to say this, I was at Lake Area High School, and I'm usually the guy that's on the sideline, has always been the guy on the sideline, guys, because I've gone through it since St. Aug. You know, guys, you know, you can't do anything about the refs. You know, they're going to make their calls. If it's a bad call, you know, your kids just got to play well and get on top so that they don't affect the game. But yet, when it's blatant, I mean, not incompetence, just blatant cheating, and your kids are seeing this and you're telling them that there's nothing that can be done, how do you explain that to them? You know, and not just for football, but in life. How do you explain to them, well, look, they're cheating, but there's nothing that can be done? And so what happened in one of our games, one of our kids got thrown out of the game. And so I asked the ref, what did he say? He said, well, coach, he said we were some pussy ass cheating refs. I said, was he lying? So of course, that didn't get me kicked. That's not what got me kicked out. That drew the flag. That was another 15-yard penalty. But what got me kicked out, I ran out on the field and pointed in the ref's face like, I can't believe how you guys are cheating these kids. I mean, and I just lost it because it was so blatant that it was just ridiculous. I mean, you either were incompetent, which means you shouldn't be a ref, or you were blatantly cheating. I mean, how can the sideline ref on the other side of the field, he calls offsides on the guard on the right side of the field?
Yeah.
It was just crazy. So, I mean, they literally had to escort me out with the police. And when the police came over, they're like, who, him? Tyrone? Like, yeah, he got to go. And they couldn't even believe it. But that was a situation where it was just so understand. And, you know, like I said, I was always the one trying to calm down all of the other coaches because I knew it was nothing that could be done, but it was just so bad. And what really got me was the fact that the kids coming off the field was like, coach, they are cheating us. And like I said, I just had no explanation for that. Right. To give to them. You know, and so I mean, it really has to be addressed on every level.
Yeah, my concern always was because girls basketball is a lot more physical than boys basketball. They kill each other out there, and I was always concerned about safety. You know, somebody's going to get hurt because you're letting these girls push and shove, and they're fighting for the ball and things like that. And I did almost the same thing. You know, you got one official making all the calls, and the other guy, he just got a great seat for the whole game. He's just running up and down the court. An official on the other side of the court calls a foul, and the guy who's standing in front of the play where the foul occurred doesn't call anything. And I stood up and I said, you can't make that call because you're not in a position to see the game. That's his job over there. Oh, you got to go. You can't say something like that. It's like you. I get escorted out. My wife's embarrassed. I get escorted out by the police. I get to go outside, and they're just like, hey, all I'm concerned about is whether make sure these girls don't get hurt. That was my big thing. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, and if you're letting them slap each other in the face and say, oh, they're just going for rebounds, or you let them push each other down, or, things like that, someone's going to get hurt, and it's not going to be pretty. Some little girl's going to get, well, I shouldn't say little girl because they're all big, but some girl's going to get a torn ACL or something like that, miss her whole senior year because you didn't call fouls to get these girls to back off each other. I understand injuries can happen in a sport, but if you're letting them the big girls get to beat up on the little girls, that's not basketball anymore. And that was always my concern.
I mean, and like I say, something has to be, it really needs to be addressed on every level. It really does.
Yeah.
There needs to be some type of consequences for these refs.
Exactly. Well, Tyrone,
I'm about to get escorted out of this live chat.
Yeah.
We got a Falcons troll, and I'm fixing to. Anyway, Tyrone, do you have a favorite among the Final Four that you see being able to?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, we talked about this at our game, and from what I saw, I'm gonna tell you who really has surprised me, and I've heard about. I hadn't seen them play until the other day, and Jacksonville defense. I'm like, oh my God, they are the truth. What they did to the Steelers, and I can tell you after seeing them play, and after watching the Minnesota Vikings, everybody, well, and it's funny because, again, when I look at games and kind of going back to the referees, when I look at games, I look at it objectively from the defensive side, whether it's the Saints defense or the opponent's team's defense. We ran I think that last drive before the field goal, we ran a 10-yard out route to Thomas, and me and the guy that I was with, who actually used to play with the Patriots, we both looking at each other like, how in the hell is the defensive back, or why is the defensive back backing up? So everybody, and we were talking about the Minnesota defensive back, and everybody turns and look at us like, who y'all going for? We were like, oh, we still going for the Saints, but just we're always looking at it from a defensive perspective. And so when you talk about some of the pass interference calls, everybody was complaining about it. On every pass interference that Crawley had was called on. It wasn't even a question. But of course, they don't want to have any calls called against the Saints, and all calls against the opponent team they feel all right, which is not the case. The out route that Sean was screaming about should have been whether it was pass interference to Ted Ginn. It was a 50-50 to me. I think the guy had gotten there right as the ball, maybe a millisecond before the ball did. The matter was Ted Ginn should have caught the ball. I call him 50-50 because you don't know if he's going to catch it or not. Right. Whether he's doing punt returns or catching the ball. He's my 50-50. But to me, it was a good no call because it was really right there as it happened. He should have caught the ball. So all of this, the refs were cheating. The one call I think they should have called that they didn't was the hands to what Drew got hit in the head. It wasn't blatant. It wasn't very hard. But the fact of the matter is they've called it in previous games throughout the season on other teams, and even with Drew sometimes. They did call the one where our defense hit their quarterback in the head, but it was two guys, and one Cameron Jordan came from one side with a forearm, and then the other defensive, and I can't remember who it was, he came from the other side and just pounded him in the head. So
it was Trey Hendrickson.
It was definitely warranted. But when you're talking about looking at these guys, whether the call should have been made, I think they should have, and that's just kind of how I look at the game. As an object, I look at it fairly, because I want to see what's going to happen. But I think a lot of the calls were, the majority of the calls were correct.
Well, the only one that stands out to me, I thought that was called on Crawley, was the one, I think it was Diggs that did it. It was right there at the 1 yard line. Diggs is starting to push off, but he basically has Crawley, like he's holding hands with Crawley, because there's a clear end zone camera shot.
Yeah, well, Crawley was still grabbing his jersey. Is that the deep ball?
Yeah, the deep one, and
Crawley was still kind of grabbing his jersey. He's grabbing him. It could have went either. I think that was a situation where they could have made a no call.
Exactly.
But it was pass interference.
Yeah, and that was my one no call. They should have picked up the flag on that one.
Yeah, they could have made a no call on that.
Yeah, because
can I put you on the spot, Tyrone?
Say that again.
Spot.
Put you on the spot.
Oh yeah, I've been on the spot.
Okay. Oh, you line up 10 plays. You versus Michael Thomas. Who's going to win the most?
Oh,
I would say it'll be a 50-50 because I think one, my speed, and again, you have to see this is his second year. And we'd have to look at if it was my second year or if it was my fourth year. Where was I, knowledge wise of the game? Because one thing I understand about the Saints, if you press their receivers, they can't get off the ball. One, I know he's not going to run by me, so I'm going to hound him all day. And they like to use him on crossing routes. So if I play him inside man and press him, then most of the time, as long as I know, depending on our coverage, as long as I know where my safety is at or where my leverage is, I know how to play him because I would use my speed. Again, I did the same thing against Chris Carter. One thing I knew about Chris Carter, I could not put my hands on Chris Carter because the minute you put your hands up, because I was smaller than him, he was going to try to use them to grab me or grab on and throw me aside. So I would probably kind of fake at him like I was going to jam him and then come off and use my speed against him. There were several passes that I was right there and you thought he wasn't going to even catch the ball and he made some great catches. That's who he was. So there were times that just caught it and, even though you had good coverage. So I think in a situation with Michael Thomas, depending on the year that I was and him in his second year, at this point, I would give him 50. I give him the benefit of the doubt of 50-50.
There you go. All right. Tyrone, I'm going to give you one last thing, and then we're going to have to wrap it up tonight. Who do you have going to the Super Bowl? Who do you like?
I think that's what we kind of, I guess, forgot about that. My picks would go with, I'm going to, after looking at Jacksonville, and like I said, everybody for the Saints assumed if we'd have moved on, we were going to beat Philadelphia. Okay. Didn't play the game, but like I said, you always got to play the game. And just like with Minnesota, I'm like, Minnesota was, to me, was a far more superior team. They were favored by 5 points, but that's why you have to play the game because you never know what can happen. My pick is Minnesota's going to be the first team to play in their home unless the NFL has that true conspiracy and the refs come out and take the game away from them. And not let them play at home, but I really believe it's going to be Minnesota and Jacksonville because I think they're going to lay it down. I don't think Brady's going to be able to handle Jacksonville's defense because they don't have, other than Cooks, they don't really have a receiver that can run away from any of their DBs. And Cooks, and they like to do a lot of crossing routes and not many deep routes. Everything's quick, get it out of Brady's hands. So. I think they have guys who can match up very well, obviously, defensively, and a front four, or actually a front that can put pressure on Brady, kind of like Minnesota did with the Saints. I mean, when you can rush forward and it feels like a blitz, that's what Drew Brees, he's getting pressured with only 4 guys, but it's feeling like it's 5 or 6 coming at him.
Yeah. And it just so happens to be that Jacksonville has a purple knight running the ball for him. So I can see where you're going with that.
One of the best purple knights ever You know, so and I want to give Leonard Fournette his congratulations out there, and hopefully again, I say Minnesota and Jacksonville, with Jacksonville possibly winning the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's good.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
That'll be an interesting game. That would be an interesting game.
Well, and it would be, because when you look over the years, I mean,
well,
if you look at the AFC and the NFC, the AFC has consistently been New England, the Steelers, Baltimore at some point, and the Indianapolis Colts when they were there with Peyton Manning, or Denver. Yeah, Peyton went there, but historically, it's always going to be the Steelers, Baltimore, or New England that's going to be playing in the Super Bowl. But when you look at the NFC, it's just been about every team. The only team I think has gone more than once is the New York Giants over the last 15 or 20 years. Yeah. Other than that, it's been a different NFC team going to the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I try to tell people when they start complaining about the Saints and saying you should have had Drew Brees in more Super Bowls. You just have to look at the division, the conference, and how few teams are actually able to send teams back to back to Super Bowls or multiple Super Bowls. The Seahawks did it, the Giants did it, and if back to 2004, Carolina has done it. But other than that, like you said, it's been lots of different teams every year going, and the teams that end up in the championship game, always different teams that are going year to year. We're the only division that has had all four teams in the Super Bowl. We're the only division that's had four different teams, all four teams win the division. It's just one of those things that just you don't see that in the AFC like you do in the NFC. So
exactly. I mean, and that's the thing you got to look at. But Jacksonville stepping up this year with the defense that they have. I mean, I think they're really going to give the Patriots, but you can't ever give up on Belichick. Everybody talk about Brady, but Belichick is that mind. He's going to come up with something or figure out some kind of way to defeat that team. But I think pressure-wise, Jacksonville is really going to give them a problem.
Yeah, Belichick is the Dark Lord of the Sith. He's the one that's going to try and make Blake Bortles beat him. And that's just the way it's going to go. Well, Tyrone, thank you for taking all this time with us. I know you'd rather have other things you'd rather do on Tuesday night, but thank you for telling us your stories.
Yeah, I kind of went to tap out Tuesday.
Thank you for sharing your insight on the game, on your game, and also the current Saints. And I know you said you're not on Twitter very much, but how can people find you if they want to keep up with what's going on with you?
Facebook is I don't even know what is my name. I know it's Tyrone, Tyrone Hughes, Mr. 340, because I know they made everybody change, I think, to their real name. So it's Tyrone Hughes on Facebook, Mr. 347. You got Tyrone Hughes Saints Hall of Fame page. You got the Tyrone Hughes Friends page. So, I mean, there's several ways to catch up with me on Facebook. Twitter, I think it's at Tyrone HOF 33. Page Mr. No Drama, Mr. _ No Drama. So I mean, I don't do those very often. But Facebook is definitely a way you can find me, inbox me, what have you. And again, for those of you out there who are listening that may have some St. Augustine Purple Knight friends, family members, what have you, I am applying for that job.
Well, best of luck to you. I hope you get it, because I'd like to see what you have to offer St. Aug, because I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Sean, you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to give Tyrone's involved with two nonprofits that I wanted him to get the opportunity to get out there to our listeners.
Yes, thank you. For those of you out there, one is People's Community, ran by Miss Leatrice Hollis. It is a nonprofit that we do affordable housing, meaning we use soft second money where we give grant money. You have to have, in order to qualify, you have to go through a first-time home buyers program or seminar. You have to have a credit score of 585 or higher. You have to have an income between $30,000 and $40,000 to qualify. The last houses we did were 168,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, about 1,500 square feet of living space, and they had we were giving up to $65,000. So basically, you were looking at a $168,000 house, walking into it with $65,000 worth of equity day one, which means you would have about $103,000 note for 30 years, which was less than $500 a month, which makes it affordable. We have several several lots that we're looking at to build some more houses. You can look up People's Community. Go to peoplescommunity.org is where you can find information on that. That I'm working with, that I'm really trying to help promote and get some more awareness to, is Angels Place charity with Mark Furman over there, who's the head over there. We did a toy drive for the kids. Angels Place deals with helping the families of terminally ill kids. We're talking about kids that are definitely going next month, within the next year, but we all forget about the families or the other siblings involved that are still have to go to school or maybe taken out of school because they have to come here to New Orleans because that one family member is sick. So they try to help the family members, whether that's with counseling, whether that's with, hey, let us come bring some people in that are qualified to watch your child. If you just want to get out of the hospital and just take a break, helping them with counseling with the kids, the other siblings that may be involved that get forgotten about. So that is one charity I think everybody needs to look into and try to help out, is Angels Place.
All right. Well, thank you, Tyrone. We appreciate all that information. Sean, do you have anything to wrap up the evening with?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Tyrone for joining us tonight. You guys, we're friends on Facebook, and just I happened to look at his icon and see that he was active at the moment, and I said, hey, we'd love to have you on sometime. He said, when? I realized it's short notice, but I don't have a guest for next week. And he said, cool. And he showed up, and he did a phenomenal job. Thank you so much. It means so much to us that you took time out of your schedule to join us and to do such a wonderful job.
Thank you for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, Tyrone, thank you very much. You have a good
night.
Evening. And rest of y'all, thank y'all for sticking with us. Because we had a guest on tonight, we really didn't talk much about the playoff game. And we only have a couple minutes left. We really went over time anyway. Basically, we saw what I like to say the entire Saints 2017 season in a nutshell. The first quarter and a half, that first half, basically it's like those first two games of the season. And then we got, in the third quarter, we got basically what happened during the 8-game winning streak, particularly against the Washington Redskins, until the last 10 seconds. And then you kind of saw what we saw in games like the Falcons game, the first one in Atlanta, the Rams game, the Tampa Bay game, where it just slipped away from us. So that game, in many ways, is kind of a microcosm of the season. So I know it's frustrating, it's depressing, that the season ended this way. But I look at it this way: unlike the 2011 team, which was kind of an aging roster, you think they may have had one more run left in them. This is a team that's very young, very good. I think they have a lot more runs left in them to go. I know Drew Brees is 39, but the rest of this core is very young and very promising. And like Tyrone said, they can only get better. So I think we get a couple more pieces in the draft, a couple more pieces in free agency, and we're ready to make a run where we're the 1 and 2 seed, where teams have to come to our stadium and play. And we were 7-1 this year. There's no reason we can't be 8-0 next year. Sean, I mean,
well, you got the way that it ends. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at all. I'm disappointed. Absolutely. Not just that it ended, but also the way that it ended. I won't even pretend that I'm not. But you have to take it into context over the course of this entire season. Going into the season, no one really, as I pointed out a week ago, no one really Saints any higher than third in a 4-team division. And after 2 losses into the season, they pretty much said, well, we're 7-9, blow it up, let's start over. And I say all that to say this team has so incredibly surpassed all expectations put on it, not only prior to the season, but especially after that 0-2 start. That, you know, once you reach the postseason, you got basically 2 ways that your season is going to end: in the ultimate triumph or a bitter heartbreak. And as I put on the preview for the show tonight, if you don't risk everything, you'll never win anything. So yeah. I wouldn't have missed the ride for the world, man.
Yeah.
We did a lot of amazing things, and we've got the table set to really and truly see this team go to the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll talk more about this next week, as well as review what happened in the NFC Championship game. My predictions are going to be Philadelphia and New England. And I'll probably be wrong, like I was wrong this past week. But that's just how I feel is going to happen. We'll talk about that next time. Thank you guys for staying an extra half hour for us. Thank you again, Tyrone Hughes, Saints Hall of Famer Tyrone Hughes, for spending so much time with us. Really appreciate this. And hopefully we can get him on again, talk some more, maybe about the draft, and just, you know, relate some of the draft experiences, what a player goes through to get ready for the draft. That would be some great stuff. So we have a bunch of stuff lined up. Believe me, the Saints season's over with, but our season isn't. We're year-round coverage, and, you know, we'll always have good guests, and we'll have a lot of stuff, exciting stuff coming up for y'all for 2018. So thank you guys for joining us in Under the Dome, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.